Hey everybody, I'm Miss Rachel with Dougherty County 4-H, and today our lesson is how to start transplants. So, what are transplants? We're not talking transplants as in the medical field, these are transplants in the garden. So, transplants are seeds that you start growing in a small space, like an egg container, before you transfer them into a bigger space to grow. This gives them a head start and they've got a bigger chance to survive. Uh, Transplants can also be the plants that you see at the store. They're in a little container. They're ready to plant. They're ready to go. So if you go to Lowe's and Home Depot and you see some plants, those are transplants. So plants that really benefit from transplanting, those will be these, as you can see, broccoli right here. We've also got cabbage over here, tomatoes, and pepper plants like bell peppers, jalapenos, peppers like that. And can you notice something that all of these kind of have in common besides the obvious, which is they're green? Uh, all of these plants are very fragile. Seedlings are very fragile. They're baby plants. Um, so they're really susceptible to too much water, too much sunlight, uh, pressure. If something steps on them, they could, get taken out. We have to protect them and help them grow as best we can. So when you start a garden with transplants, these seeds are started in a seed bed, as you can see right here. They're transplanted into a secondary container for growth and development, and then they're transplanted to the container or place where they will grow and finish their life cycle, like your garden outdoors. For example, tomatoes are germinated. They're transplanted to a flat container, grown out for several weeks, and then they're planted in the garden after the last frost. Of course, with gardens, we have to be sure to take note of the weather. We don't want to put them out when it's the flood season or when the frost is going on. That can take our plants out. We got to protect them. So a seed bed may be a small container of seed starting media, and by media we mean soil. The soil actually has other particles in it. That's why it's media. It's made up of a bunch of different things. Um, and it's a flat filled with that media or a prepared bed in the garden. Those seedlings are at a greater risk for insects and disease attacks. The seeds can be scattered across the top of the media or sown in rows. So as you can see right here, these have been thrown out there. They're in a kind of a group in a pile. And then you've got one down here that's sown in rows. So just with that last picture I showed you, we've got to thin these sprouts. So why do you think we need to thin them? The best thing I can explain it as is, let's see, if I took a candy bar and I threw it into your classroom, what do you think is going to happen? We all know what's going to happen. Everybody's going to bolt to that candy bar, right? They want it, it's theirs, it's going to happen. So the same thing kind of happens when it comes to sunlight and water and nutrients in soil with plants. They all kind of compete for those nutrients, and they will start to crowd each other, and they'll start to kind of pick off the weaker plants so that they can grow and be the best plants they can be. So when you thin the sprouts, gardeners will usually grow or sow more seeds than are desired as a precaution to ensure that the right number of plants is ultimately grown. Seedlings need to be thinned, so leaving the remaining plants with enough space between them to develop and grow properly. Even though it can be difficult to remove excess seedlings, crowded plants, plants that are not thinned are at risk for death from competition for light, water, and nutrients. Spacing information can be found usually on the back of a seed packet. So if you go to the store and you're starting your plants from seed, just flip it over, and not only will you see the right kind of climate to plant them in and what season, but it'll tell you how far to space them out so that they won't compete so much for nutrients, water, and sunlight. And if anyone here has actually grown a garden before, you've noticed that when you start plants from seed, or they're little tiny plants, they'll lean towards the sunlight. That's natural, it's normal. So if you thin them out, they've got a better chance of all of those little seedlings getting enough sunlight. And of course, just like with everything else in life, we have to have a good foundation, right? We have to pay attention to the soil in our gardens. Managing moisture during germination and at the seedling stage can be challenging, especially in the rainy months. You want to keep the soil moist so that the embryo does not dry out, but you also don't want to overwater it. We don't want it looking like this picture down here where it's got standing water. You really want the soil to look like this soil right here. Dark brown, no reflecting standing water. That means the soil is getting enough moisture flowing downward. The one at the bottom looks like they kind of, I don't know, might have picked some soil out of the ground, just shoved it in their garden box, and it might have some clay in there. It just might not be potting soil. This up here looks more like potting soil because I could see some I don't know, some other kind of stuff in there. We've got some sticks and things. But it's potting soil. The difference between potting soil and that soil you find in the grass and the dirt outside is that potting soil was made so that those soil particles there's enough air in between it that water can just flow down. The soil right here that I said might have clay in it, the clay doesn't have enough separation in the particles so that water can seep down. That's why it's sitting right here with water in it. It's just not good for planting. So you've got to manage the moisture, and you want to keep it moist, but don't dry it out and don't overwater it. It's just got to be perfect. So we've got to be careful with those seedlings. Like we said at the beginning, they're basically little baby plants. Babies are fragile, so are baby plants. So after germination and the development of the first true leaves, the seedlings can be transplanted to a container of choice. So after it goes from like the little baby stage and we move it, we keep it growing and it'll grow into these with the true leaves, that's when we need to transplant. Seedlings can be set approximately the same depth they were growing at in the seedling flat or the pot. Avoid planting too deep or too shallow. So when they're ready to be transferred to the garden, they're going to have several sets of leaves and a sturdy root system. That's vital for your plants to really have that strength to carry on. They're going to look like these right here. Got a good set of leaves, got a nice strong root system down here. So those would have a great chance of growing and getting you some vegetables or fruits. But plants that are raised in a high humidity or sheltered location, they need to be prepared prior to planting in drier, harsher conditions like going outside. This preparation process is referred to as hardening off. One way to prepare plants is to move them outside to a shady location and gradually increase the amount of sunlight over a period of several days. So after transplanting, of course, you want to water them thoroughly, but gently. So with hardening off, we want to basically kind of build up that, I call it a tan. We kind of want to build up that tan before we put them out in full sun. They could get sunburnt. Plants actually do get a sunburn. So we have to kind of help them adjust to that new environment so they can take off and benefit us. Make sense? Cool. So it's time to prepare your seedlings if you haven't already done so. So seedlings right now that are good to go: tomatoes, peppers, beans. You can start some squash right now, but wait till after the last frost of this season and wait a week after that and plant them then. So we hope you can grow some stuff this season, and good luck on your gardening. Thanks, guys. Bye.